What's up, my wizards? It's Dev and Julie from Mtg. We like magic. Both of us like magic. And I'm here with your Ixalan pre-release / sealed guide. Gonna try and help you win some packs here by telling you what I think the top 5 uncommons and commons in each color are, and kind of telling you how I feel about each color individually. But first, some pointers. The first and most important piece of advice that I want to hammer home here is don't focus too much on tribal synergies, considering this is sealed. If this were draft, then yeah, you'd have way more agency over what your deck eventually ended up looking like. But in sealed, they just throw you a few packs until you build out of this. So if you had your heart set on Merfolk when you walked into the shop, but you only get like 4 playable Merfolk, then don't do it. It's a honeypot. It's a trap. You want to play anywhere between 14 to 18 creatures in a sealed deck, usually somewhere around the middle, 16 or 17 creatures. At least half of those have to be one tribe for you to be able to really focus reliably on a tribal synergy. So if you don't have the support that you need in a given tribe, don't go for it. It's a trap. Number 2, stay on curve. It's going to be really, really tempting to play like crazy high CMC stuff in this sealed. There's a lot of like 5 to 7 or even 8 mana stuff that just looks ridiculous. It's going to be tempting to try and like stack your deck with a bunch of those, but we want to stay on curve as much as possible so that we don't lose ground in the early game and eventually die, even though we did play the 8 mana 9/9. We eventually got to it and then we died the next turn. Don't let that be you. Stay on curve. And the last general tip that I want to give here is that both the Explore and Treasure mechanics in this set are specifically tuned to sealed, from what I can tell. Some of these cards look okay in constructed formats and good in draft too, but these two mechanics seem to shine specifically in slower games like sealed. Treasures can provide you with fixing that is really difficult to find elsewhere in this set. That's going to be really important, especially in sealed. And Explore, that can also provide you with some form of fixing. Card draw in the form of drawing lands is going to be pretty important, or they can bring the creature sort of up to curve. A lot of Explore creatures are below curve as far as their power and toughness, the ratio to their converted mana cost. But Explore can often bring them up to or sometimes above curve, so that's also good in sealed. Just both of those mechanics are specifically tuned to be very, very good in this particular format, so take advantage of that. Now in sealed, it can be a little bit difficult to really develop a plan, but it does help to know what sort of cards to be looking out for when you go into the event. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what my top 5 uncommons and commons are in each color. I'm not going to go into rares because it's especially difficult to game plan around rares. You cannot count on opening up a specific rare. You just can't. So with that in mind, I think it's much better to cover the cards that you're much more likely to open. So let's start with white. Well, the 3 white uncommons I'd be most looking out for are Imperial Aerosaur, Ixalan's Binding, and Steadfast Armasaur. Imperial Aerosaur is just awesome, man. 4 mana 3/3 flyer is already okay, but when it buffs a creature and gives it flying on ETB, that is really powerful. There's a lot of value stacked onto this card, and it's awesome in a format like Sealed. Play every copy of this that you get. Ixalan's Binding is just really good removal. That second part of the text there doesn't matter really at all. Sometimes they'll have multiple copies of a card, but really you're just looking for more or less unconditional removal against a lot of stuff, and that is what Ixalan's Binding does. And Steadfast Armasaur is just a really cool creature. Note that you can use its ability before damage is dealt. That's going to be really, really important a lot of the time. Just like, and the Vigilance is nice too. You can attack in with it and still use its ability, or you can attack in with it. It'll be left up to block where you can use its ability. This is just a really good looking card in my eyes. The other 2 white uncommons I'd be looking out for most are Bellowing Ivysaur and Bright Reprisal. Bright Reprisal looks a little bit expensive, but it's splashable. A lot of the removal in this sealed environment is kind of expensive, and it draws you a card. You get their best attacker off the board, and you draw a card. That is often a blowout, even at 5 mana. I do, again, love how splashable it is. Bellowing Ivysaur, again, a little expensive, 6 mana, but is also splashable, and you could do a lot worse than those stats, but the best part of it is the Enrage trigger. This is one of the better Enrage triggers in the entire set, so if you get one of these, knock yourself out. It's amazing on larger boards. And there's a lot of token synergies and stuff. In Vampires, and Bellowing Ivysaur works out pretty well with those, so keep that in mind. And before I move on to the commons, I just want to give a nod here to Glorifier of Dusk. If you're behind, the card's not great. You don't want to pay 2 life to deal 4 sometimes, but 5 mana 4/4 flyer is at least okay, even when you have to pay life for it. You're not going to pay for the Vigilance too much, but you can make this a Sarah Angel if you want to, but honestly, at the end of the day, I'm just not sure how great the card is, especially when it comes down and you're behind. That said, 5 mana 4/4 sometimes flying is at least worth playing in sealed most of the time, so I had to bring it up. Now, white may have some power uncommons, it's hard to argue, but kind of makes up for that by being not so inspiring in the common department. But there are some things that I want to talk about here. Bishop's Soldier, Pious Interdiction, and Legion's Judgment are all commons I'd be looking out for. Bishop's Soldier is just a good bear, man. A 2-mana 2/2 with really good upside in this case. Lifelink is a pretty relevant ability. So I like Bishop's Soldier, especially at the common slot. Sometimes you'll be able to get more than one copy of this. It's a really, really reliable curb filler. So pick up a couple of copies of those if you can. Pious Interdiction and Legion's Judgment are just really decent removal. Judgment I'd pack one copy of in the main deck, and if you get any more, keep them in the side. Remember that any card you don't use in sealed is in your sideboard, and you can put it in game 2 if you want to. That's important to remember, but I would still pack at least one copy of Judgment in the main deck because there are an awful lot of big creatures, and it's not going to be too hard to find a target for it. As far as Interdiction, I like this card a lot, actually. It's not Fate's Fetters or anything, but it does a pretty good impression. It gains you half the life. You get 2 when it comes into play, and the creature can still use its activated abilities, but this is more than good enough for sealed play. It's more or less unconditional removal that keeps big guys from attacking and gains you some life. There's nothing to not like about this card. And a couple of other commons I'd be looking out for are Paladin of the Bloodstained and Slash of Talons. Neither one of these are really high in the power department, so it kind of shows you how much I had to reach for white commons that I really, really liked. But these are at least serviceable. Paladin of the Bloodstained gives you a fair amount of power on 2 guys. One of those dudes has lifelink, gives you a couple of blockers or a couple of attackers. So I like Paladin. I think that it's pretty versatile, and I like filling my board, especially in sealed, so I'd probably play it. And then Slash of Talons is probably the closest we'll get to shock. That's a good way to look at it, and it can kill dudes post-combat that have taken a little bit of damage too, so that's important. Overall, I think that white has some really good creatures at most spots on the curve. 2, 3, 4, 5 mana, white has some pretty good stuff to look at. So I really like the creature spread in white, and I kind of like the removal for that matter, but a lot of the best cards are at uncommon, so they're not going to be as easy to get, and a lot of the commons aren't great. So overall, I'll give white probably a score of B, if I had to guess. Just a solid B, good limited color, but not the best. Let's talk about blue real quick, and I'll tell you my favorite uncommons first. The things that I'd be looking out for most of all are Tempest Caller, Stormfleet Aerialist, and Stormfleet Spy. A couple of good Stormfleet cards here. Spy is going to draw you a card a lot of the time, and that's awesome, especially in sealed. Drawing a card is one of the best things you can do in the game of Magic, and it's especially powerful in sealed, where whoever sees the most cards very, very often wins. So that, card draw on a body, a serviceable body at that, is always going to be good, so I like Spy. Same thing with Aerialist. Getting a 2-mana 2/3 flyer is actually really, really good. That's a fantastic rate, even in constructed, So getting it in sealed, especially since it's not too hard to activate, is going to be great. We want flying creatures more than we want almost any other kind of creature. It's probably the best ability that you can play in sealed, and getting it cheap on a decent body, always good. Stormfleet Aerialist is amazing. As far as Tempest Caller, this can just end the game when it enters the battlefield. Tap your opponent's whole field, Alpha Strike, and that's really good late game in sealed if you've gotten into a stalemate or gridlock type situation. So I really like Tempest Caller, and I don't mind the body that it comes on either. And this is often a spell. Something like Sleeps, tap all your opponent's dudes. Coming on a body is really good. A couple of other blue uncommons that I'd keep my eyes peeled for are Deadeye Quartermaster and Air Elemental. Air Elemental is just the OG. It's always good in sealed. It's one a sealed game. It has just a 5-mana 4/4 flyer is always desirable. So play your Elemental. It's a good card. I shouldn't have to tell you that. And then Deadeye Quartermaster is good specifically if you get a good vehicle or equipment. There's a couple of good uncommon equipments that I wouldn't mind playing. Just so I don't have to tell you about them later, Prying Blade and Cobbled Wings are both really, really good equipments to be looking out for. If you get either one of these in a Deadeye Quartermaster, you might want to play that Deadeye Quartermaster if it's worth it to you to play blue, because tutor effects are always good in limited, and those two equipments are especially good in sealed. As far as the blue commons, there are some pretty good support cards to point out here. Things that I'd be looking for are Sailor of Means, Run Aground, and Storm Sculptor, first of all. Sailor of Means looks really good, like better than he looks at first glance, to me at least. You know, he's a pretty good blocker in this format, and it's going to give you some mana fixing, a little bit of ramp if that's what you need, but the fixing is going to be really, really important in sealed. So I like Sailor of Means a lot more than I did the first time I looked at him. The more I read him, the more I think he's probably a pretty good sealed card. Run aground, effects like these, like Time Ebb and such, are always going to be good in sealed. It's a lot better than it looks too, but veteran players know how good this effect is. More or less denying them their next turn's draw step is pretty good, and forcing them, instead of returning a creature to their hand, you're forcing them to both draw the creature, play it again, wait another turn to actually get to swing with it unless it has haste. Just things like this are always good. Run aground is much better than it might look to rookie players. And then Storm Sculptor is yet another unblockable creature, and you can turn that downside into an upside. But even if you can't, having a 3-power unblockable creature in sealed is always crazy. This card is good. A couple of other blue commons that catch my eye are Siren Lookout and Shipwreck Looter. Shipwreck Looter is pretty good as a pseudo bear, 2-mana 2/1 that can sometimes loot you a draw when it enters the battlefield, which is actually really, really good in nearly all formats, so I assume it's going to be good in sealed, and a 2-mana 2-power guy is good enough in sealed already. So I really, really like Shipwreck Looter a lot. As far as Siren Lookout, at least it has flying. It can sometimes be a 3-mana 2/3 flyer. That's okay, and sometimes it'll just be a 1/2, but it'll draw you that land. That's fine too. I've already mentioned that I like Explore in sealed, and this is one of my favorite Explore cards in sealed, just because you already want to play flyers, especially in blue, and this will either give you a little bit of value or get a little bit bigger, both of which are desirable. Overall, I think that blue has a good spread of serviceable cards at both common and uncommon. It looks like a pretty attractive support color. I like that about it, but it doesn't look like it can hold its own as well as other colors, and even though the overall value across most rarities is pretty good, I just don't see a whole lot of like slam dunk amazing blue cards. So even though it's a pretty solid color, I'm still going to give it a B- here, because I again don't really see it playing a dominant role in a deck. It might, but I'd say that it's more often going to be relegated to a supporting role. So let's check out the black uncommons and commons that I like real quick. The black uncommons that I want to see the most are Walk the Plank, Seeker's Squire, and probably Deathless Ancient. Now, black doesn't have a whole lot of incredible uncommons that really jump out at me, but Walk the Plank is one of the best uncommons in the set, so it makes up for it by having one of the more power uncommons that you can possibly come across. Walk the Plank is extremely powerful. Play that if you get it. One of the best removal spells in the entire set. Seeker's Squire, I see a lot of value on this. A 2-mana 2/3 is very good and limited. I already discussed that. But even if it just draws you a land, that is also good. I'll take the 1/2 body for 2 mana and a drawn land. That's good either way you slice it. Again, I like the Explore mechanic, and I think this is one of the better Explore creatures at the end of the day. So I'd play Seeker's Squire if I got it and I'm in black. And then Deathless Ancient, you could do worse than a relatively high-costed, high-powered flyer. Yeah, I know it costs 6 or whatever, but still, 4/4 flyer is pretty good, even if you don't have the requisite amount of vampires to make this work. 4/4 flyer is playable and limited every day. Some other black uncommons I like are Dark Nourishment and Heartless Pillage. I've already said that I don't mind 5-mana removal in this format, so Dark Nourishment looks okay to me, and it can take out a nice spread of creatures, but not truly large creatures that you're going to be seeing once you get to 5 mana on the curve. But I do think this is still pretty good removal that's going to remove a guy. Like 9 times out of 10, it's not going to sit dead in your hand too often, and it'll get you a little bit of life and get you back in the game a little bit. I like that about it. So Dark Nourishment is at least on my radar. And then Heartless Pillage, if you can make the raid work, that's fantastic. Getting a treasure out of it is really, really good. I'll take that every day. Again, fixing is great, but Mind Rot just by itself without the raid ability has always been worth playing in sealed in the right decks. I don't see that changing. Getting the last 2 good options out of their hand is always going to be good in sealed. As far as the black commons, the stuff that I like the most is definitely Contract Killing, Fathom Fleet Cutthroat, and Vanquish the Weak. Contract Killing, these are really all just removal. I was going to say Contract Killing and Vanquish the Weak, but all of these are removal. Fathom Fleet Cutthroat is removal, usually post-combat on your turn. You'll take that every day. Get rid of one of their guys. Get yourself a 2/2. Yeah, awesome, actually. Contract Killing is, again, 5-mana removal. It's a little black intensive, but you'll take it every time, especially if you get a couple of treasures off of it. That can be blowout. So Contract Killing, I would play, especially if I was committed to black, obviously. And then Vanquish the Weak, sort of the analog to Legion's Judgment from white, but this is really playable too. Again, there's a lot of curve-filling creatures, things at 2 and 3 mana. In this set that people are going to be playing. So Vanquish the Weak is actually going to do some work, and it's, again, worth at least 1 copy in your main deck. I don't think you'll ever be really sad to have it. And the other black commons that I'd be looking out for are Skymarch Bloodletter and Skittering Heartstopper. I really, really like Bloodletter. We like Windrake in Sealed. You know, it's got Windrake stats plus a drain. I'll take the extra life, and I'll do a little damage to them every time. I'd play Windrake as many copies as I got of that, so I'm playing all the copies of Bloodletter that I get too. And then Skittering Heartstopper is at least worth pointing out because these cheap Death Touch dudes are always really, really good in Sealed and underestimated, and they're especially good in a format full of relatively big stuff, so you can just stop their heart cold with your like little insect dude, and that's going to be even better than usual in this Sealed environment. So don't let Heartstopper fool you. Little Death Touch dudes are always good and even better in this case. Overall, I like black in this Sealed environment. It's got all the good removal like it usually does, but a lot of the best removal in black puts you firmly in black. Like Walk the Plank and Contract Killing both require double black. And that can be a little bit tough, but those cards are so good that you probably want to play them if you get them. The only problem is that I see kind of a deficit of really good threats in black. There's a couple of decent creatures, but for the most part, you're going to be finding your threats in other colors. This is yet another color that I see being more of supportive color than an active color in your deck. But the problem with that is that the best cards put you firmly in black, so you're going to have to make it a really active color in your deck. Whether or not it's worth it to you really depends on what all other black cards you open. So even though I do like it, I'm still going to give it a B-, which is a good score, don't get me wrong. I think that a lot of the colors in this Sealed environment are better than they usually are because this is a better Sealed environment than we usually get. Wizards did a really good job with Limited this time around. So even though I don't think that it's the best color in the set, I'll still give it a B- because the removal is very, very real in black. But on to the red commons and uncommons. As far as the uncommons go, I really like Trove of Treasure, Charging Monstrosaur, and of course Lightning Strike. Lightning Strike is just incredible, super splashable, instant speed removal that's going to kill a lot of stuff that's pretty low or even middle on the curve. You're going to play Lightning Strike every time you get it, no matter how many copies you get of it. Play Lightning Strike. It's awesome. As far as Charging Monstrosaur, I'd say the same thing about it. Play all the copies that you get of it. You know, it's splashable. 5 mana, 5/5, very good rate already in Sealed, but 2 abilities, Trample and Haste. Just this card is way over the top for Sealed. It's one of the best uncommons in the entire set. Monstrosaur is awesome. And then Trove of Treasure is really, really neat. I don't really necessarily think that the first part of it is a downside, as a lot of people would put it. First of all, if they can attack you, they're going to attack you. This is Sealed. That's how every game is won. If they can profitably attack, they're going to do it anyway. And if they can't attack, well, at least, you're going to be forcing an unprofitable attack, which is kind of an upside, honestly. And getting a treasure every single turn to do whatever you want with is just awesome. Man, it's probably worth playing this for 4 mana and it doing relatively nothing for the first turn that you play it, because the sort of the overall value of the card in a game can be really, really good. It can ramp you a little, can fix your mana every turn. There's just a lot to like about Trove of Treasure. This card's good. I also like Fiery Cannonade and Bonded Horncrest. Horncrest is just a 4 mana 5/5, and it's not going to be too hard to find another creature to attack with it at all. And 4 mana 5/5s are always pretty boss in most formats. I don't see that being any different here. Horncrest is definitely something I'm looking out for at Uncommon. Again, should not be hard to find another creature to attack in with it. As far as Cannonade goes, this can be good if you're building the pirate deck, obviously, or if you're trying to go a little bit higher up on the curve, you've got some big dudes you want to get to, and you want to, sort of in the early game, control the board a little bit. You got a Lightning Strike and a Cannonade, go to work, control the board in the early game, drop your late threats. It all depends on what kind of deck you're building, but Pyroclasm is almost never bad. Sometimes even if you have to kill one of your own guys, killing 3 of their guys is a really good trade. Red also has a bunch of really good commons in this set. The stuff I'm looking out for most is Fire Cannon Blast, Fathom Fleet Firebrand, and Rummaging Goblin. Rummaging Goblin looks unassuming at first glance, but in sealed, the ability to essentially draw a card every turn is fantastic. You will want a couple of these. As far as I'm concerned, I love drawing a card every turn just to tap it. I know you got to discard first, but Rummaging is great. Rummaging is fantastic. In sealed, I will take this. Tap it, draw a card is great. Firebrand is another bear. You know, it's a 2-mana 2/2 with upside, and we like mana sinks in sealed. I specifically like this. I think this might be the best 2-mana 2/2 in a set with a few 2-mana 2/2s. You know, this is not the only one. We've already seen Bishop Soldier, and we'll see another one in green. But I think this might be more or less the best 2-mana 2/2 in the set because I love mana sinks, and it wasn't that long ago that red didn't even get 2-mana 2/2s without a downside of some kind. So something like this is really, really good as a curve filler. And Fire Cannon Blast is hands down, in my opinion, the best red common easily, and one of the best commons in the entire set. Shouldn't be too hard to activate raid, and once you do, you can take out nearly any creature in the sealed environment. But even without raid, being able to deal 3 to a target is pretty good in and of itself. You'll take that all day, that's removal. But if you do get raid, you can shoot almost anything in the entire set. That's worth pointing out. For 3 mana, that's really good removal. The other red commons I'll be looking out for are Unfriendly Fire and Stormfleet Pyromancer, just because both of these are removal. Stormfleet Pyromancer is removal on a body, which we'll always take, and then Unfriendly Fire cost a little bit, but again, 5 mana removal is not bad. This is an instant speed, it's splashable, it's going to kill a creature a lot of the time, pretty much every time, or it can deal the sort of killing stroke to your opponent. So all of that is good. I actually like Unfriendly Fire a good bit. Let me take a hit of this Boppin' Strawberry real quick. Ugh, it's parched. Video not sponsored by High C, by the way. But anyway, I think that overall, red is probably the best color in this sealed environment, hands down. And I don't say that every day. I like red as a color, but it's not like I'm biased towards it. I usually don't think it's the best color in a given limited environment. But in this one, it's got an awful lot going for it. Red might have some of the best removal in the whole set, amazingly, and a lot of it at common. That's awesome. And it's got a lot of really good threats, too. Solid creatures at most spots on the curve, and really good stuff way high up on the curve. Like Monstrosaur is a freaking beast. So, and that's not the only, you know, high value, high dollar creature that red has way up there on the curve. There's a lot at all spots, and they're all costed pretty well and aggressively, honestly. Red just has some of the better creatures in the set and some of the better removal, so I gotta give it an A. Red's looking really hot in the set. But let's cap it off here with the green commons and uncommons. As far as the uncommons, I'm definitely looking for Merfolk, Branchwalker, Thundering Spineback, and Savage Stomp above most other cards here. Branchwalker is probably the best Explore creature at common or uncommon, hands down. This can get way above curve pretty easily, or it can just draw you land and stay on curve. 2-mana 2/1 is fine by itself, but a 2-mana 3/2? Yeah, that's great. And when it draws you the card, it's not like you really lost any value. Besides, like Deadeye Tracker, this might be my favorite Explorer guy in the whole set. This is a really good creature, you guys. Thundering Spineback is really high up on the curve. 7 mana is a lot to ask, but once you do get it out, it can just like poop out awesomely huge dinosaurs. If you get this on the board and you have it for more than a turn or two, it is very, very likely that you win the game off of it. Having something that can do something like this in sealed is unbelievable. And Savage Stomp is just a better version of Hunt the Weak, even if you don't have a dinosaur. You know, putting a +1/+1 counter on something and then having it fight has always been a really good thing to be able to do in sealed. Not any worse with Savage Stomp. In fact, it's way better than Hunt the Weak ever was, so you'll play all the copies of Stomp that you get too. Some of the green uncommons that I like are Atsakan Archer and Snapping Sailback. Sailback looks really good to me. 5 mana 4/4 with Flash is great already, as far as I'm concerned. And the ability to enrage for a +1/+1 counter is also dope, considering you're going to flash it in and play it as removal on your opponent's attack step an awful lot of the time. Flash it in, block with it, instantly make it bigger, and kill a guy. And if they dare to block it the next turn, it can become a 6/6 after that. So this card looks like a lot of value and really aggressively costed too. But big fan of Snapping Sailback. Play it as a removal and just let it get bigger and bigger as the game goes on. Card looks fantastic to me. And then Ixalan Archer looks a little bit narrow, but I actually think that it has a fair amount of promise in this set. A 3-mana 1/4 is at least a decent blocker, but there's way more to it than that. You can play it post-combat and surprise them a lot of the time and kill a guy, you know, especially a smaller dude. Obviously, this just kills 1 toughness creatures right off the bat, but like 3 and 4 toughness creatures that barely survive combat, just sneak this guy in post-combat and you will kill their dude, and sometimes this guy will survive. So that's pretty sweet right there. And, of course, it can enrage your own dinosaurs if you wanted to, so there's that synergy to talk about as well. I just think there's a lot of good things about Archer that I like. As far as the green commons, green got a lot of good ones. First of all, there's Pounce, Jade Guardian, and Tishana's Wayfinder. Pounce, man. Pounce is some of the best green removal I have ever seen in my life. Instant speed Prey Upon for just a mana more is a really, 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 really good deal. Especially when they declare their attack step. Haven't declared any attackers yet. They've just declared their intention to attack. A Pounce can be great in that moment. So, Pounce is awesome, man. I love having fight at instant speed for very, very little cost. This is a great card. You should play every copy of Pounce that you come across. As far as Jade Guardian, I can't believe that this is a common. This could have been an uncommon very easily. In case you didn't know, Hexproof is a crazy ability to have in Limited. Hexproof is a crazy ability to have in Standard some of the time. So having it in Limited on a 4-mana 3/3, which is already a pretty decent frame for the cost, that's a decent rate, is just unbelievable. Like, I'm a really big fan of Jade Guardian. I like this card a lot. And Tishana's Wayfinder is yet another card that's just value. You know, decent value in and of itself. It's going to, you know, do one thing or the other for you when it comes into play, either getting you the land or getting a little bit bigger. Both are good for the cost. Some of these cards are a little overcosted for what they do, and then once you explore with them, they get up to value. But a card like Tishana's Wayfinder and Merfolk Branchwalker from the uncommons, I think they start out at least decent value and get even better once you explore. That's what I'm looking for. Those are the good explore cards. And as far as the other commons I'm looking for in green, Ixalan's Keeper and Blossom Dryad are pretty decent. Blossom Dryad can untap lands, and again, fixing is going to be tough to find in this sealed environment, especially if you're playing green and no other color that creates treasures, because you're not going to find treasures too much in green. So, if you don't have fixing in that avenue, then something like Blossom Dryad can be really good to help you fix your mana. And then Ixalan's Keeper, there's a whole cycle of these smaller guys that you pump 8 mana into and they do a thing when you sacrifice them. I think that Keeper might be the best of them, although I do like the red one. I should probably nod to that one real quick. Hello, red one. But this one I like. Again, it's a bear, so 2 mana 2/2s with upside are always good and sealed. And the upside here is really good late game. You know, getting a creature huge and sending it through with trample is probably pretty good on turn 12 a lot of the time to help break a stalemate. So I like a lot about this. Great curve filler that has decent late game relevance. You're always looking for those. Overall, I think that green has way more depth as a color than it usually has in a limited environment. This is a really, really good showing for green, so I'm going to also give it, I'll say a B+. We'll put it there. I don't think it's quite as good as red in this environment, but I do think that it is easily a very high tier color in this sealed environment. I like green an awful lot. Again, so much depth, a lot of really, really good threats, and instant speed removal this time. So green is looking really, really good to me. But I'm pretty sure that's all I got to share for you for my pre-release guide. Any questions, ask me down in the comments below, and I'll try to get to you. I've covered a lot of cards here, but this is a huge set with a lot of cards. So if you have any questions about any other individual things that you might like or you think might be terrible, just let me know. I'll try to get to you down there in the comments. You can also like the video if you enjoyed the video. Sub if you're new, because deck techs are incoming very, very soon, like in the next week. Actually, probably less than that. So go ahead and sub if you're new so you get them deck techs, because that's the best thing that I do on this channel. It's my favorite thing that I do, at least. So do that. You'll want to see those. You can also follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev if you're interested, or you can kick me a buck on Patreon at patreon.com/SBMTG. And if you do that, you can help pick the order of the first 5 decks that we're going to do this deck tech season. I'm going to be doing that vote in just a couple of days' time now, so go ahead and sign up for Patreon if you haven't done it yet. Also, remember to check out my Spansa TCG player who helps bring you this video today here and every video that I make. In fact, they help out a lot. So check them out. They've got the lowest prices on sealed product for Ixalan you can get on the whole interwebs right now. It's only about $90 for a booster box, which is at least a $10 discount, if not more, at some stores. So check them out. I'll leave a link in the description for you. Helps the channel out a lot, helps them, helps you even, because that's really, really cheap sealed product. So check them out, and I'll see you cats next time. I'm Dev from SBMTG. Good luck at your pre-release. Thanks for watching, my wizards.